So you finally get everything sorted out. You write it down and you separate the responsibilities, the ideas, and the direction. And for a moment, everything feels clearer. But then you stop because now you are waiting for clarity to tell you what needs your attention next. And this is where many women might feel stuck, not in the overwhelm and not in the sorting of things, but right here in the waiting. Because once things finally become quiet enough to see, your mind starts asking, what if this is not the right season for this yet? What if I spend energy on something that is not ready to move? What if I focus on that and realize something else needed my attention first? And suddenly the pressure starts building again. Not because everything suddenly became unclear, but because now you are trying to answer questions that movement was meant to reveal. If clarity does not come first, what does? Because many of us think clarity works like this: you stand still long enough in order to understand it, you think hard enough to answer every pondering question, you organize enough to make sure you don't forget anything, and eventually clarity appears, holding a blueprint for your whole life. No, clarity rarely arrives all at once. Here's what I mean. Sometimes clarity feels less like suddenly seeing everything and more like driving carefully through fog. You cannot see the whole road ahead of you. You cannot see every turn. You cannot even see the next car clearly in front of you. And you definitely cannot see 5 years from now. But as the car moves forward, the road slowly becomes visible, little by little, and you begin to see what is in front of you. That is often how clarity works, not all at once, and not even 20 steps ahead either. Just enough light for the next part of the road. And I think this is where overthinking quietly returns because your mind wants certainty, it wants reassurance, it wants to know, is this actually where my attention should go right now? But some forms of clarity cannot be discovered standing still. And this can be very difficult for some people to understand. Some things only become clearer once movement begins. So let's think about this for a second. If clarity does not come first, then what does? Order, placement, movement. Order needs to come first. Just like when you are ready to organize a room, then comes placement, and then comes movement. Because sorting the room is not the same thing as living in it. Order is where you separate what you are carrying. And if you have not watched the first video yet, go back and watch that one after you finish watching this one, because that is where we unpack why everything starts feeling important at the same time and how to sort what you're carrying. We talked about responsibility, ideas, and direction. That is order. But order by itself does not mean anything will move because you can sort ideas beautifully and still never move one forward. And I know this pattern very well, actually. I have spent years building quietly, thinking deeply, organizing ideas, planning systems, writing things down in several notebooks, creating frameworks. And eventually, I realized I was building so much quietly that I needed to finally start sharing not only what I create, but how I think, how I process things, how I carry things. Because I know there are other women who think this way too. And this is part of why this channel exists now. So now, what comes after order? Placement. Placement is where you decide this belongs here, that goes there, this can wait, this needs more wisdom first, and this right here, this is what needs movement now. You are not trying to solve your entire year in a single day. You may have tried doing that before, trying to organize the whole year plan in one sitting, trying to figure out every possibility ahead of time. But for now, you are learning to recognize what belongs in this season of your life. Some things belong for now, some things belong for later, and wisdom is learning the difference between the two. Then comes movement, not reckless movement, not rushed movement, and especially not movement without discernment. Thoughtful movement, faithful movement, movement with wisdom. And sometimes movement looks like having a conversation you have been avoiding. Posting the idea of content or like posting the piece of content that gave you an idea to help someone. Starting a project quietly just to get it out of your head. Teaching the lesson your child needs to hear. Applying for an opportunity you have been shying away from. Asking for guidance when you are wrestling with your thoughts and emotions. Praying for wisdom before making a decision. Movement does not always look dramatic or fast. Sometimes movement looks small. Sometimes movement looks repetitive. Sometimes movement looks almost invisible, especially when no one else can see it yet. But movement reveals things that overthinking alone cannot. Now, pay attention to this part. The goal is not to suddenly become a woman who only cares about the one thing forever. Many of us carry layered responsibilities: home, children, marriage, business, ideas, learning, service, creative work. The goal is not eliminating every layer. The goal is learning that not everything needs the same level of attention at the same time. That kind of thinking changes everything. And I want you to notice how this shows up. If you are building something, you think you need clarity about your business before you begin. And of course you do. But watch what happens if you stay there. You wait, you think, you research, you reorganize your ideas, you research again, and then again. And you keep adjusting the plan again and again. Did you notice the pattern? You stay inside preparation because preparation feels safer than movement. Has it ever happened to you? But what actually starts creating clarity? Writing one piece of content, helping one person, testing one idea, writing the chapter, sharing before everything feels fully polished. And if you are homeschooling, you may think you need clarity about the entire school year before you can feel confident teaching day one. But clarity often grows while you teach, after you notice what is working, after you adjust, after you respond to the child in front of you, and sometimes after you learn to teach with more patience, more, more mercy, and less pressure on yourself. And if you are managing your home, you may think everything needs to feel fully under control before you can finally rest. And when I say rest, I do not mean only sleep, because rest looks different to everyone. Sometimes rest looks like quiet. Sometimes it looks like creating, learning, gardening, listening to music, working on something that is meaningful using your hands. But often, clarity begins settling when your mind finally has room to breathe again. Different responsibilities, same pattern. Movement with wisdom reveals what overthinking alone cannot. And this can feel uncomfortable because movement often happens before everything feels fully resolved. That is why discernment matters, prayer matters, wise counsel matters, your wisdom group matters. Having a wisdom group that loves you and supports you does not mean you are incapable of making decisions. It means you recognize you were never meant to carry every question alone. So here's your next step. Look at what you are carrying right now. And if you have not sorted it out, start there first. Your piles of responsibility, ideas, and direction. And then ask yourself, what needs my attention most carefully right now? Because not every area of your life needs attention at the same time. And I am very sure you probably have more than one thing that matters deeply to you. And that's okay. But not everything requires the same weight, the same energy, or the same urgency today. That is where things begin to shift. So instead of asking, how do I narrow my whole life down to one thing or one role? I want you to ask yourself, what needs faithful movement right now, while the other things remain in their proper place? Because that is a very different question. If there's anything you remember from this video, remember this: movement with wisdom reveals what overthinking alone cannot. Movement with wisdom reveals what overthinking alone cannot. You do not need every answer before taking the next step. You need enough discernment to recognize what needs your attention right now. And many times, the clarity you are waiting for begins unfolding after movement begins. You begin noticing what brings peace, what creates unnecessary pressure, what produces fruit, what may need adjusting. But many of those things only becomes visible through movement alone. So let's rewind for a second. What comes first if clarity does not? Order, placement, movement. Because movement begins uncovering what standing still cannot reveal. Some things become clearer through faithful action, through experience, through testing, through time, through paying attention. And some things in your life right now may still feel unfinished, unclear, quiet, hidden even. But that does not mean nothing is forming. Sometimes what God is forming in the season looks less like a finished building and more like foundation work underground. Quiet, hidden, easy to overlook. But foundations still matter, even before anyone else can see the house. This is Brand Fusionist, where layered thoughts become ordered steps.